For this panel discussion, we have a set of very experienced speakers with us. May I invite Lulu, Khandeshi, CHRO, Manpower Group, India. Mr. Sriram, V, CHRO, bankbazaar.com. Shailen Merchant, Head HR, Chola MS General Insurance. And Anju G. Parvathy, Vice President, Research and Solutions, Avatar Group. Welcome, everyone. Lulu, we'll start with you. We have spoken about workplace of the future. We have spoken about skills required to do the new job roles that are coming up. So what is the current state of skill gaps in the industry, and what are the job roles that you find are hard to fill?
Sure. So thank you for having me over, Sonal. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I can see we have a lovely audience as well. So I guess you asked me a very broad-based question. Okay, so when we talk about skills, it could be blue-collared, it could be white-collared, it could be technical, it could be non-technical in nature. So it's going to be a very generic response that I'm going to give you. So there definitely is a gap for sure. But I know from an industry standpoint, so I represent an organization which pretty much does a lot of this kind of work for close to about 1,500 clients. We've been in this business for 75 years now. So in terms of supporting, clients, it could be, if I have to talk about something a little more specific, moving from the generic bit to a specific aspect, is we're working for an IT company wherein we're looking at fresh college grads, giving them the kind of skills and expertise that the client is asking for, because it's very, very dynamic in nature. There would be times when they require something specific in nature. Likewise, if you talk about areas that you probably don't find in a tier 1 city, you end up going to a tier 2 or a tier 3 city. So when you are, again, servicing clients, there'd be certain requests where you know that you're not getting that talent in a tier 1 city, in a metro. So we advise clients, let's go to a Surat, through a Rajkot, to an Ahmedabad. And I think all of that is taking off big time. So although there is a skill gap, there is a talent shortage, I think the way we are maneuvering it and the way the industry is managing it is absolutely brilliant. I wouldn't talk about the government part of it at this point of time, but I think everybody is doing their bit to actually scale up and support this particular gap. And at the end of it, I wouldn't say that there is anything wanting. Okay, there probably would be a few delays here and there, but eventually we do make it, yeah?
So that was a very positive sentiment. Anju, so before I come to the two specialists we have, Anju, you also look at your work with a lot of organizations on developing their L&D programs. So what is your take on this? Is it as optimistic as what Lulu has just said?
I think optimistic and futuristic is the way to go. So with regards to the L&D framework, but all said and done, I think we have to accept the stats on the table. The fact that only 49% of India's youth is found to be employable as per India Skills Report. 80% of engineers in India require additional skills to manage the VUCA environment we are in as per National Engineers Employability Report. So those are the stats to put on record, right? But how our industry is managing it, I think industries and organizations are extremely intentional and creating neat frameworks. They are looking at internal, the people they have within the system and, building their skills. So there are combinations. So we are a firm that runs a lot of those training initiatives in the context of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have seen organizations adopt models which include classroom training, virtual training, scalable training, right? For example, at Avatar, we have this concept called Avatar Academy, which is the Netflix in DEI. So it is learner-initiated learning. You can, kind of subscribe to it and learn everything about DEI in that particular portal or platform. We see organizations adopting that model because I think we are a bite-sized generation. We like it or not. I'm talking about bites before lunch. But the fact that people like quick snippets, quick learning. So that's a model, and I think even industries, hardcore industries like manufacturing, like FMCG, are adopting and embracing technology in a never before model. So so point one is the whole technology and adopting different models of learning, and two, I think the industry academia partnership, that is becoming a very, very important model. And we see organizations like HUL, we see organizations like Google. Again, Google partners with Avatar and ISB to run a program around digital marketing skilling for women. So that's again the industry academia model. RIL, I think, is partnering with Coursera. So there are different models that are emerging, but here to stay, I think a lot of work that industry and academia have to do together to ensure that 80% becomes 10% in, say, a couple of years from now.
And rightly so, I guess Dr. Bruce touched upon in his presentation the whole focus on academia and industry partnerships, and I guess Shailen will also mention about it. So Sriram and Shailen, you're both in the industry that has undergone like disruption at a very large scale. Insurance, the way it is, the way insurance distribution is happening, the way processing is done has changed dramatically. And also fintech has transformed completely the way lending is done. So can you talk about, Shailen, talk about how, what are the skills gap now you are finding in your industry? Are you finding the competent talent, or are you developing the talent in-house?
Thank you. So we are growing at a very fast pace. Last year we grew up about 22%. Industry is growing at that kind of a pace. And in the industry, we are largely a retail player, whereas you'll find people having a mix of commercial and retail business. 75% of our workforce is actually in sales. So that brings its own challenges. We have, at our organization, penetrated the rural market quite a bit. We have these kiosks that we have placed. Now we have moved to a virtual model of sales. And at the end of the day, insurance is a promise. So it's the person who kind of, talks to the customer. So we found that we did not have adequate. So this industry has only about 33 players. There's some more entering. And there's only this limited pool of talent that's available. So then there was no other way but to develop talent internally. So what we did is, in the markets that we were present in, we went to colleges, campuses, took freshers, and put them through a one-year program. I know in today's context, 1 year is a long time. So what we have done is, it's a 4-month on-campus program, 2 months internship, and then followed by a 6-month on-the-job training. In that on-the-job training, we provided a mentor to them because that was very critical to success. And we were able to then train them on product, process, etc. A couple of advantages. One is firstly the cost, because this came at a much lower cost than what I would have hired laterally. 2 is there's no competition to hire from in the markets we were operating in. 3, cultural alignment, because then there was no baggage of the past. I can only sell this product, I cannot sell that product. So we could train them for multi lines of business. So this worked very well. The other skill gap we're finding is, because technology is now a disruptive force for us, we had to set up this whole tech center, right? And nobody wants to leave an IT company and join an insurance company for technology. So how do we create an employee value proposition for this whole thing? How do we attract talent in and start building that? So data and tech is something that we are again focusing on. Again, risk management is an area that we need to work with, because we've spoken about so many things from morning that brings along a whole lot of risks, especially customer data that sits with us in a retail organization. So these are the areas that we are now working with.
Sriram, what would be your take on this?
See, my industry is slightly different from most of them. For us, a 50% growth is a poor year. Most of the fintechs grow at a mind-boggling speed. So therefore, a lot of the things are very different. For the industry, which largely I'm in, right? For us, skill gap is not an issue, because we can source it globally, right? So we have the advantage of not having a person physically. So what is actually happening in the industry is that a lot more focus happening on the planning. Traditional industries probably will have a manpower planning or skill planning for the year. Industry probably will do it in a lot more agile way, having a lot more looked at it on a monthly basis. Therefore, the whole thing, the skill is not the issue. The issue is that how tuned are you to the growth. The growth can be very aggressive. Business can pivot very fast, and the regulations can really hold you, because we are in a very regulated space, especially with RBI getting very aggressively focused. So the point is that in our industry, skill is not the issue. I won't say skill is not the issue. Skill gap is not the issue. I think accurate planning and agile planning is the most critical thing required.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to elaborate a bit more in the second round. Before that, Lulu, since you are a CHRO of a very big company, you also look at clients' learning and development programs. So, in your perspective, and again, I'm going to ask you a broad-based question as earlier. So, whose responsibility is for skill development? Is it the government, the industry, or the employees themselves? Like Anju spoke about bite-sized learning, and during that a lot of times companies give these courses to employees, but the onus is on them to learn during their free time, right? So what is your take on this?
So I would say it's the ownership bit. Okay, I'll probably dwell a little bit on that bit. So I don't think anybody is responsible for this. Okay, it's and if you ask me, I think the government is doing its fair share. You have things like apps, you have Pradhan Mantri Yojana, various schemes that they are driving for people from the tier 2, tier 3 cities. So they are doing their bit. Okay, in terms of the industry and the corporate and the HR, if that's the the segments that we are referring to here, I think it's a joint responsibility. Okay, your end goal is very clear. What is it that you want to achieve? Okay, you have the monies which are very clear. You know what is the skills that is needed to reach that piece. I guess you put all of that together and decide how you want to go forward with it. Very classic case, I remember talking about it when we spoke earlier, is if you look at the BPO space, that's another industry I've been closely associated with. 20 years back, there was this very, a very deep need for voice and accent trained executives. So what did the BPO do? It tied up with training institutes and said, provide VNA accent training. So you had the first right for refusal as a corporate, and then whoever was available was put to other BPO companies. So I said, you just have to be agile. You have to think on your feet, and that is the most exciting part, for the HR fraternity today. And since this is the HR fraternity, I think right from skill, the earlier part that we spoke about, how do you constantly innovate? How do you think about where you're going to get these people from? Are you hiring for performance? Are you hiring for potential? So there are, a multitude of factors that come together to create that solution. So it's not just a single-pronged approach saying that, is it a skill that's required? Skill again, it could be competencies, like the earlier panel spoke about productivity, absolutely so. For your middle managers, it's competencies. For your entry-level people, my colleague referred to it, getting people from colleges. So it has to be very, very specific. Your end goal needs to be clear, and you work towards it. And in terms of your responsibility, government responsibility, I think they are doing their bit. It's all ultimately with us. We have the resources. We have the intelligence. We have the capability. We absolutely can run with it. The academics part, the academia part of it, I think corporates should engage a little more with, colleges, etc., and keep, the kind of courses that are offered by colleges more specific to what corporates would need. And there have been training institutes that have jumped in that this, college to campus. Campus to, those kind of courses. So there is all of that happening. So much of innovation, so much of interesting things happening. So I just think it's an exciting time, and we just have to run for it, run with it. So that's where we are today.
So thanks, Lulu. You also spoke about the need to plan for skills that are required. And Sriram, this was something that, can you elaborate on how do you really implement this strategy in the workplace?
With respect to my organization?
Yes.
Yeah, see, this is specific to, let's say, all fintechs or probably new technology spaces or e-commerce industries. This is something which they looked at because there's so much of, as I said, the rapid pace, and that companies don't remain in the same shape for a longer period. In the sense, a loan distribution company gets into an allied space very quickly, right? A banking aggregator can get into a card business very quickly. So what is happening is, so therefore the alignment towards business pivoting becomes very critical. So therefore you need to be really tied to the business on a regular basis. I would say almost on a daily basis, because here you are, the difference is people. The platform is the same, it's going to be people. So it is like, it's almost planning specific to manpower and skills probably takes the highest priority in the function with respect to all the firms which probably I can represent. You can think of any of the e-commerce organizations in the HR space. Among the multiple priorities, I think this probably will stand the topmost. And I have not seen industries in this space largely complaining about skills. But they always complain about availability in a very shorter span. Yeah, so that's, I probably before I hand over, I'll draw an attention to this. Last week, if I'm right, L&T, the CEO of L&T mentioned he has short by 45,000 people. And he says, the business is there, but I'm not able to take it because I have 45,000 people, I have a requirement, I'm not able to hire. And this is something, a particular organization is talking about. But you will not hear this from a different segment of industry, especially the new age industries. So this is the understanding we should have. These skills in the country are getting aligned to a certain spaces, but there are a lot more spaces where there are requirements, but people are not there. So it's a very interesting gap. Probably we can elaborate.
This is interesting. Anju, as you work with like a plethora of companies, what are the areas that you see that, I know Lulu had a very optimistic view that it can be, these gaps can be filled. But what are the roles that companies are struggling to fill in today's day and age? And what are organizations like yours doing about it? And this is also something that Shailen, I'll also ask you post Anju's answer.
Great question, Sonal. I think rather than the roles, then we are dehumanizing it, right? So maybe let's humanize it a little bit. The combination of functional and leadership skills. I think finding people with the right kind of combinations is what is a struggle in many organizations that we have seen. And that is the intent, that is the aspiration, to hire people with the right kind of combination skills. And I think, again, we have, multiple researchers telling us the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report states that the top 3 skills of the future, A, analytical thinking, B, creative thinking, C, resilience, flexibility, and agility. Digital literacy and technical skills come 7th or 8th, right? So, which means that that's something that we have to pay attention to, not to discount technology at all. I have a technology background, so I was a national topper. I had a degree in computer science from BITS Pilani. I started out my career in artificial intelligence. 3 years span, 2 patents, 3 international publications. I thought my career in AI was set. But then the 3 M's struck: marriage, maternity, and motherhood. So how I approached my own career, how I approached my approach to careers in general changed post that. And in fact, what I realized when I tried making career comebacks was only the gap was seen, right? The skills were not seen. My skills, whatever I could put out in my resume, were not seen. But what I also realized that I was ignoring certain skills that I had at that point of time. I just focused on my technical skills, and I was focusing on getting a role which was only a fitment to my technical skills. So even from a candidate aspiration point of view, I think it's evolving now. People are talking about green skills. People are talking about risk skills, right? So these are all skills that the workforce of the future has to be ready for. Organizations, futuristic organizations have to be ready.
Very interesting. So, Shailen, so as employee expectations are evolving, are, employers also able to keep pace with it, considering, getting the right growth is also something that is the number one factor, that employees look at while joining an organization?
Yes, I think when an employee joins, the first thing the employee will ask is, what am I supposed to do? After that, they'll ask, how am I doing? Then the third question is, what is in it for me? So the aspirations come from that. And when I look at that, definitely there's a growth aspiration each employee carries. So what we have attempted to do is, we have actually a model in the group where we look at work level 1, work level 2, work level 3, where it's an individual contributor role or a team leader role, etc. So we've created these transition programs. We've looked at performance and potential, brought people into these programs, and then created the first time managers from within the frontline employees. So that's created the first step of change. Now we're attempting to do the next level, which is, at the manager of managers. We also have leadership programs that are internal, and that's what's providing that. The other thing that we're doing is, in insurance, you find people are either motor people or health people. They're very, very specialized and verticalized. So now we are insisting on job rotation across channels, across geographies, across lines of business. And we've taken a set of people who have kind of stayed on vertical for a long time and then encouraged them, influenced them to make those moves. We'll have to provide the parachute, of course. They should not fail there. And thereby, so if I'm stagnating because there is no headroom in my particular channel to grow, this provides them the opportunity to move to the next level. So these are things that are helping people. So just to give another example, a dead-end job for us is an ops role, right? So they issue policies, but they know the core systems extremely well. They know the workflow systems very well. If I go to hire a tester from the market for insurance, very difficult to get, and that too in a city like Chennai. We've taken the ops people, skilled them, and put them into testing roles. So it creates a career path, at the same time provides them an opportunity to grow, and we get a skill that we require. So this is just one way we have taken it.
Very interesting. So, Lulu, what are some of the initiatives that you have seen around skilling? Because I have also seen a lot of initiatives around skilling fail. So what where do you, or what are the initiatives? When is it that they're really successful, and how are they implemented? Can you share some best practices around that?
So I can probably talk a little bit about what we do in my current company, and then if time permits, in my previous organizations as well. So in my current company, we have, like my colleague Shailen rightly mentioned, the upskilling, reskilling, etc. is something that if you do internally, you're very, very successful with. So we have 5 or 6 lines of, within the organization, yeah. So we have 6 lines of businesses within the company in addition to manpower staffing. We have HR consulting, and likewise we have 4 or 5 other businesses. So when I came on board, 5.5 years back, I realized that people were not really aware about what happens in the other lines of businesses, although you probably are inclined and you have the, the wherewithal, the skills, etc., to excel in that space. So one of the initiatives that we started was Know Your Business. So we had business heads from each of these businesses talk about what happens in their space, what is it that's required to be successful, what is it that they're looking for, etc. And then we had, a job posting done for all our internal positions, and you had people who were inclined, to your point, inclined to move into a particular role, pick this up, and that's exactly what sets them up for success. Because it's not that you decide say you have a requirement and you try and force fit people, it doesn't work. So the desire needs to be internal, it needs to come from within, and that's something which we did very successfully in my current company. So we had people from the vanilla staffing segment moving into the HR consulting bit because they had the right kind of skills, and they're doing brilliantly, and obviously a fantastic retention tool as well. So this was one of the recent initiatives that I can talk about. I won't want to dwell into the last, 28, 30 years, but I'll stay with this one, yeah.
Sriram, can you talk about some of the best initiatives around skilling in your workplace, at Bank Bazaar?
Yeah. See, 90% of the time, the demand for upskilling or parallel skilling comes from the employee, right? Yeah. So because in the someone is working in Java, push you to do, I want to do next skill, right? So if you have a high-end tech workforce, which is predominantly 80% of our setup, what happens is the pressure actually comes from the employee. Many a time, I say I want to be, now if AI, I mean just not AI, they will be a lot more deeper into AI. So what happens is, most of the time these are all horizontally moved skills, right? It need not be vertical, they just move from horizontal skill from one to one, right? They want to be versatile. So we follow this rule of 20, 30, 50. So 20% of the time they come, we make them go through certain, predominantly Coursera or some other certifications, and then they do that work. 30% of the time they get into the job and have a mentor or some lead managing them. 50% of them they go without any supervision, just based on their appetite and their past records. We just move them saying, okay, you want to be in the new skill? They learn on the job, on the go. And people, if they are specialized in a particular skill set, they probably can pick up a person who's comfortable in a back-end programming. Becoming a full-stack programmer is not difficult. So, but the interesting point is that the role of HR is more to facilitate, not really into planning here, because the demands are actually very high. That now what next is for me, what I should do more, give me a space in the analytics. So even if there is no role, specific role, we move them and make them do shadow. So that's only way you can satisfy the need. And the byproduct is you get a skill base which is a lot more rounded and all available in one go.
Great. Shailen, you spoke about your programs around skilling for entry-level workers. What about middle managers, leadership roles, and how do they differ and should differ within the organization?
Sorry. So what we've done now is we've created a talent pool. We've looked at the high performers. We've taken a group of about 20 people and put them into the talent pool. This is the pool that we will tap in for any new roles that will come up in future. There we have tie-ups with some of the leading institutions, good brands, in terms of delivering programs for them. And thereby, so if I take a team leader and I make him a business leader, he is going to answer for profit and loss. They need to understand the nuances. They need to understand the finance language. And that's the shift that they need to make mentally. So we need to prepare them for that. So one is by giving them the role, but the other is to enable them to get into those roles. So that's what we have done as one step. I also spoke about some of the managers moving up to managers of manager roles. There again, we've looked at the competency framework. We've looked at what are the competencies required, what's the next level of competencies required for that, and then invested in that in terms of internal programs. A lot of it comes through developmental experiences, very honestly. The classroom training is only limited, but you put the person on the job and then have someone kind of guide them through that process. That helps to kind of develop them. And we've seen fair amount of success in that. Yes, some do drop off, but we do lose a lot of people to market, because then they're better able in terms of the capabilities are better. But if we don't invest in that, we have growth aspirations which will double in terms of top line, etc. So to meet that aspiration, we have to create that internal pool.
And are days of classroom training gone already, or do we still have some leeway for those?
Very, very little. See, in my case, most of my workforce is distributed across the country and in places where I don't even have a branch or a physical thing. Maybe 2 people, 3 people. So it's impossible to get everybody into classrooms. And COVID taught us that very well. You can't get that. So what we have done is we've invested in e-learning platforms.
Okay.
We've created content. We've bought content. Along with that has come a lot of artifacts, and we encourage people to take that. And it's again, like one of the earlier panels spoke, it's bite-sized content. Nobody's attention is there for more than 30 seconds or a minute. So we've created a lot of bite-sized content, which we now have brought in. Apart from that, we are also regulated, so we have a lot of compliance needs. So all that is also delivered through the e-learning platform today.
Okay. Lulu, what is your take? Are days of classroom learning, getting everyone together in a room, are they gone already?
I would say it's not gone away, it's minimized. That's my perspective. And we do have learning LMS platforms. Most companies, most corporates have that. But I can tell you for a fact it's not used as much as we would want it to be used. And I've seen that, I'm talking about the online platforms, which are self-learning platforms. And the reason why I make a mention of that, that's where classroom sessions become very, very important. You know, when you have face-to-face interaction. So my perspective is it's minimized, but it's not gone away. There is always merit in healthy interactions between individuals. There is learning that happens on account of that. You have, if you look at a classroom session, typically things like case studies, case laws, etc. You wouldn't case studies. You can't really do that when you're doing it online. You know, it's when people sit together like this, groups, etc. So theater-based learning, all those sessions that we continue doing that in my company as well. Not to the same extent like we had historically, but it's not going away anytime soon for sure. There's merit in it.
Great. Anju, you know, we have been speaking about skilling, and in your earlier, you know, answer, you mentioned about diversity and the problems around diversity hiring. So can you talk about equity in skilling as well?
Sure, Sonal. I think anything
You're
about
already
DI, I get
smiling.
extremely passionate about it. The fact is that we have to acknowledge that there is a gap in opportunity as much as we acknowledge the skill gap, right? Skilling opportunities, there is a gap. That's where we have to bring in that equity. For example, how much of our learning infrastructure is accessible for people with disabilities? Have we taken care of digital accessibility? Have we taken care of accessibility across different aspects of disabilities? Or have we taken care of women on career breaks and the accessibility requirements that they may have? For them, certain skilling hours, and they need those skilling platforms to come back to work, the pace at which technology is moving. So have we taken care of those needs? I think looking at skill gaps with the lens of DEI will also help us understand that our positions of privilege, of power, can be used to bridge those gaps to a great extent. Sometimes those solutions need not be out of the box. They may not involve large budgets and investments. Sometimes they will involve. Equity is a leap of faith, right? You have to believe in the fact that there has to be that enablement, there has to be that equity that has to be met out. That's my take on it.
So thank you. That was a fantastic panel. I see our time's up.